Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series focused on youth mental health by Tharaka Foundation. I'm your host, Samika, for the next series that focuses on mental health in high school athletes. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Sarah and Isha.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a senior, and I run cross country and track.
My name is Isha and I'm a senior in high school, and I play varsity basketball.
Awesome. Let's get started. The first question is, how much time do you spend doing homework and studying on a daily basis, and how much time do you spend training for your sport?
On average, I would say I spend about 2 hours of homework each night, and then my training is also 2 hours or 2.5, depending on what the schedule is for that day.
Similar to Sarah, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 hours for homework and around 3 hours training per day.
Awesome. Where do you feel your main source of stress comes from? Is it athletics or is it academics?
For me, it would be athletics, just because I compete in both cross country and track and field, so that's 2 seasons, so I'm pretty much competing year round, and the building up to a race or a meet provides a lot of stress, and I don't know about anxiety because that has a lot of negative connotation to it, but the excitement and energy that gets built up definitely puts more stress on me compared to the way that school does in tests for classes.
I'd say personally for me, it would be more from academics that I get more stress because I go to a pretty competitive school. I think for athletics, the stress of a really big game the next day and you're worrying at night, that's more of like a fueling stress, kind of getting you prepared for it. So I'd say for me, that's like more excitatory than really like stressful. But my main source of stress is definitely more academics than athletics.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting how both of you have two different insights to this. Very cool.
Do you feel as if you are carrying an excess amount of pressure on your back as a high-level student and a varsity athlete? And if you do, elaborate more on these pressures.
I would definitely say yes. Not necessarily an unhealthy amount, just because there's definitely a balance, and it's up to every individual athlete to figure out how much they want to take onto their plate. But for me, being a varsity level athlete, not only are you competing for yourself and for the betterment of you as an athlete, but you're also representing your school. And especially in competitive leagues and moving up through CIF and even at the state meet, there's a lot of stress that comes from that, just because you are representing your high school and carrying that name. And then carrying that with academics, I would say your classmates look at you in a different way when they take the time to really think on it, just because academics, if you're dressed up in your uniform or your warm-up suit and you have your bag with you for your game leader and you're sitting in chem and you're taking a test, it's definitely noticeable. And I would say it does put more stress in that way because you do feel like you're multitasking and your head might be in a couple different places.
So yeah, I do feel like there is a certain amount of pressure being a high-level student and a varsity athlete because like Sarah said, like there's a lot of students that notice it and things like that. And when you're especially playing a team sport, you're not only playing for yourself, but your teammates and your coaches and your fans in the stands and things like that. And they all expect you to perform at a certain level, which is a bit of pressure, but I think it's a pretty healthy amount of pressure just to motivate yourself. And then trying to manage being a student and an athlete at the same time definitely does get a little bit too stressful at times. But then again, like as you progress through the years of being a student athlete, you definitely adapt to that stress and it motivates you more than it drags you down over time.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. The past, 3 years of being a student athlete myself, I've definitely experienced some of that same type of stress that you don't normally feel just doing, just one or the other.
Do you think a focus in athletics hurts your academics and vice versa? If so, how? And if not, why?
So I think the key word in that question is definitely hurts. And that can go kind of both ways, because if you are looking to compete at such a high level, not only in the varsity level, but in terms of getting recruited for college, you might want to take a step back in your academics. You can really focus and make sure you're getting the sleep. And one of my teammates has actually made that decision to kind of take less AP classes and really focus on making sure that they are the best athlete they can be. And I think that whether or not that's hurting, that depends on your judgment. But there's definitely a balance that gets found, and you do make compromises in both sections of academics and athletics in order to better yourself and create the best overall, once again, that keyword balance of just figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, so definitely a focus on athletics can impact your academics. I wouldn't say hurt, but it's just really managing your time wisely and finding a good fit of both. And I'd say like pressure that you get from athletics really kind of fuels your academics more. And you feel really willing to do a lot more because you understand your boundaries and things like that, and you're willing to push them and grow more as a student and an athlete.
All right. How do you personally best balance your academic life and your athletic life?
For me, it's definitely time management. This year, I'm also working a part-time job. And so figuring out and scheduling what hours I'm putting where definitely is a really crucial part of that. With so many hours going to training, homework, and then the 4 to 6 hours that you are spending, obviously right now, in your room on Zoom, but when it was in the classroom, in seat, in that environment, you really have to plan out what hours are going where. And as an athlete, so much of your performance depends on sleep. And so if you're staying up late studying for a test, you have to sometimes call it and say, hey, I know enough of what I'm trying to study. I can wake up tomorrow morning 30 minutes earlier and get a little more in. And that way you're balancing sleep as well. And so for me, it's definitely a really huge emphasis on time management and balance in that way.
For me, I think the best balance between my academic and athletic life would just be trying to find the little pockets of time that you have throughout the day and really using them wisely. Like if your class ends early and you have like some time to do work, really use that time to like finish up your homework and things like that, study for tests that you may have. Because letting those small like 10 minutes of time go may not seem like a big deal, but throughout the day, they really do add up. And then like even on the weekends, things like that, between games, you'll find a lot of student athletes like sitting down trying to finish homework in, and then right about 10 minutes before the game starts you'll start getting your shoes on and stuff. But just finding the small pockets of time throughout the day where you can really utilize it and get things done.
Yeah, I definitely think that both of those points are super important to not only just, pay attention to, but really integrate into your life, and follow through with it.
Do you believe that becoming a varsity athlete changes who you are mentally? If yes, how so?
I would definitely say yes. Once again, it's kind of something that varies from athlete to athlete, but my personal experience, I was able to earn that title freshman year, and I've carried it with me through high school. And it's definitely a pride and confidence thing. And when you finally are eligible to get your letterman's jacket, it's definitely a big mental accomplishment and achievement. But being a varsity athlete in the school environment, you definitely get more attention from not even classmates, but just even staff. If they see your jacket, they'll start a conversation with you. But I think being a varsity athlete increases the pressure for sure. But like kind of she was saying earlier, it is a healthy amount of pressure that you can definitely use to motivate you.
Mhm.
So I think being a varsity athlete specifically makes you really mentally tough because, like Sarah said, also being a freshman on varsity my first year, you're competing with girls who are much, much older than you, have much more experience, more skilled and things like that. And as you progress through the years, you obviously get a lot more talented and things like that. But in the beginning, things are most likely not going to go your way as much. And the way that you bounce back and recover from setbacks really defines who you are mentally. And I think that like being a varsity athlete, you have your JV and your freshman team below you and kind of helping them throughout like whatever sport you are. So like basketball, kind of teaching them, spending extra time with them. I think that's a big deal as well because they are going to be the next varsity athlete. And I think just kind of following the tradition of helping the other students through their careers as well, because you have a lot of respect on your name as a varsity athlete. So living up to the standard of having that title.
Okay, so how did/does it affect you mentally if there was a chance that you could not proceed with playing your sport after high school?
So that's definitely the difference between recreationally and professionally or at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, running was something that I started out my freshman year as a social. The biggest incentive of it was social for me. And yes, I love to run, and that's definitely a huge part of who I am. But that social incentive of making new friends and having that daily like conversation and banter definitely incentivized me a lot more than college at the beginning of it, just because college seemed so far away. When you're in your freshman year of high school, your mindset isn't, okay, what's after this 4 years? You're super focused on the moment, and you just came out of middle school. Like, you're so young, and like your brain isn't as developed. And so developing through high school in a mental state, I think sophomore year for me was when it really registered, like, hey, I want to continue doing this. I want to start making myself look valuable to colleges. And I'm just kind of assuming that we meant collegiate level when you said continue after high school, because anyone can go and throw on a pair of sneakers and run throughout college on their own or in a club.
Right.
But competitively, I would say that sophomore year is when it started to click for me, like, hey, this is an option. If I wanted to, I could pursue it and continue to run. And so I would say sophomore year, that was definitely something in the back of my mind saying, okay, like, make sure you're hitting the times, keep your effort up, stay focused on it, because it's really easy to get distracted. And then junior year, once again, just kind of in the front of your head, hey, time to start reaching out to colleges, making sure that you're hitting the marks to get you on the list that will catch their eye. What's nice about my sport is that everything is super objective and black and white. If you ran the time, you ran the time, and that information gets sent out. And then when colleges are recruiting you, it's super easy to see if you're hitting their marks. Whereas something like soccer or basketball, it's going to be a lot harder to catch eyes, because yes, there's recruiters, but if you aren't in that environment or put in that situation enough, it's easy to slip by. But because of that, I have been lucky enough to have lots of conversations with college coaches and be hitting the times to catch their eye. And I'm actually verbally committed right now. And so for me, having that, it's just a verbal commitment, so it's not a huge level of comfort, but there is something there where it is nice to know, okay, like, you have gotten yourself to this point. But if that hadn't happened and I wasn't able to have that knowledge and help in that way of being like, okay, you did get to this point, it would stress me out a bit, especially with everything that's going on right now with COVID. When stuff like that happens, it's unexpected. And a lot of my teammates and other classmates are struggling right now to try and still get on college radars, because it's a lot harder to have that. So I think that if I hadn't worked earlier on to get it, it would definitely be something that was causing me to be a bit more down and have more of a negative attitude about getting up every day to run. If I thought, well, it's only for the rest of this year or only for the next season.
Yeah.
So yeah, similarly, I am also looking to continue playing my sport in college. However, there is a big chance that it won't happen. I think that it would affect me pretty mentally, because obviously that's a big change in my life, right? I've been playing the sport I really enjoy, truly love for the past like 7-8 years. And having it taken away from me, like the opportunity won't be there anymore. It'll be really drastic change, right? And already moving to college is already a really big step. And I think that if I wasn't able to play basketball in college, just finding other things that I'm passionate about would really be important, because knowing that like such a big part of me has been taken away, it's obviously going to take some time to try and like fill the void and things like that. But looking for other things and like trying to find something else that you're passionate about would be really important.
And then our last question is, when you initially started working to pursue your sport, was it simply to have the varsity title and look presentable to colleges if you wanted to play in the collegiate level? Or was it just you following a passion? And then how did this affect you mentally?
So for me, I had just started running in high school. But before that, I was playing soccer from a super young age. And I think that a lot of playing at the club level in soccer, that does build a fitness base. And a lot of soccer players actually end up switching to cross country or track in high school, just because it's a similar aerobic challenge. But so for me, it wasn't until freshman year when I really started to get excited and get into it. And I can clearly remember talking to two of the assistant coaches at the time and saying, hey, you have the potential to be really good in this sport. Like, you could be a 4-year varsity athlete, but you need to make sure you're prioritizing it and really working towards those goals, because if you're spending your time in other environments that aren't going to help better you and could get you injured, you're taking that chance and you need to be aware. And so that conversation has really stuck with me through the years, and making sure, hey, am I doing everything I can to push forward and be successful? But it was definitely freshman year when I initially started working to pursue my sport. And at the time, it was very, oh my gosh, I'm making all these new friends. This is fantastic. And so in a way, it was a passion, but it wasn't until the end of freshman year for me when I really started putting in the work and being a lot more focused on that goal of, hey, this could be something that I could pursue in the future at college. But yeah, mentally, I would say it definitely gave me a bit more of a drive that, again, once again, just starting freshman year, it kind of kickstarted my high school career in the right direction.
So when I originally started playing basketball, I kind of thought of it as a hobby. I didn't even really think it would be more than that. And if you had told me, like, even in 8th grade that I would be a freshman on varsity, I would, no, like, I didn't even think I was going to be playing basketball in high school. So to have the varsity title, it was definitely a really big confidence booster, because I was like, you know what, I really have worked for this, and it's something that you're really proud of. Like, a lot of people look up to varsity athletes and things like that. And I did not even start like the college recruiting process and things like that till after my sophomore year ended, because I never considered the possibility that I could be playing college basketball. And now, like, talking to multiple coaches and things like that, I think just starting to play basketball, it was always following a passion. It was never about college, because I would not have worked as hard if I truly didn't love and enjoy the sport that I play. So I think, yeah, it looks really great that you're a 4-year varsity athlete and things like that. But if you're really not truly passionate about the sport, you won't get as far as you need to in order to be presentable to colleges and things like that. And I feel like a lot of students look at like student athletes who play a sport as like, oh yeah, it's a good extracurricular, and like, oh yeah, you're playing that to get into college, right? And for me personally, at least, I would never want to just play a sport in order to get into college if I didn't really love it, because I feel like that would just not only be like physically exhausting but mentally draining, spending so much time in something that you're truly not dedicated to. So when you really are passionate about a sport, you are going to work a lot harder to get better at it. And then that just, when you put it together with colleges, it's just a benefit on both sides, as you're getting better at your sport and you're having a lot more options opening up for you.
All right. Thank you guys so much for participating. And thank you to our listeners to listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series on youth mental health. Please rate and review us if you liked our episode and share with your friends. I will be back next week with another episode in this series. Bye.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every weekend, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.